Hmm. There we go. I think that everything is currently working. It was a little sketchy this morning, but I think we're all right. Let's see here. We'll put you there. That window goes down there so I can see more chat, and we should be ready to go. All right. So, for those of you who are wondering why I'm doing this an hour later, I guess. I think it's an hour later. It's because of our daylight savings time here in America. Our daylight savings time used to match the rest of the world's daylight savings time, from what I remember. But a couple of presidents ago, it got changed. So we don't match up with everybody else right now. So it's kind of an odd thing. But yeah. So I'd like to say good morning to the people who did figure out the timing and all that stuff. I'm not a fan of daylight savings time myself. I've got a hair in my mouth. But yeah, so yeah, it's a nice and sunny Sunday morning out here. It's going to be warmer than it ought to be for early November in Wisconsin, but you know, that'll be fine. We'll see how it works out. And let's see, we've got about 85 people watching so far, and we've got, let's see here, hello from Poland, Northern Germany, Tucson. Yeah, you're right, Tucson doesn't do the daylight savings. I think all of Arizona doesn't do the daylight savings. And I think that Indiana used to not do it either, or something. I know that back in the day we used to... I think it was maybe county by county, but I remember back when we used to go to Gen Con, the time was weird, and now they've kind of gotten all their stuff, all their ducks in a row as far as Indiana is concerned, so that's good. That's where Gen Con's based out of Indiana. It's Indianapolis, Indiana, which is maybe the capital, but maybe not. Let's see here. Big high five from Manchester, UK. Excellent. Thank you very much. Glad to see you. Tampa, Florida, Texas, Germany, New Jersey, Central California. It's probably pretty early there in Central California, I'm assuming, since it's got to be a little after 7. I can do math. All right. So I'm trying to figure out exactly what I know last time we talked a little bit about Kill Team, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it this week, although it's going to be more about my Necrons that I built. I built 10 Necron warriors, and I'm going to show them sort of with their built and textured bases, but they haven't been primed or anything yet. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that list, and not much, but otherwise I'm pretty much happy to be answering questions and talking to you guys. I've got West Virginia. Let's see here. Budapest, Vermont, UK, Arkansas, Kobe, Japan, Utah. Let me see here. I just saw a question. Ordaus said, morning from Green Bay. Are you going to Major Minicon again? Not today, no. Major Minicon was a tiny little kind of in-store miniatures convention based out of a store called Gnome Games in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and a friend of mine and I went yesterday to it, and I had never been to that store before, so I didn't know much about the location or how big it was or anything. It's a nice big store, it really is, but it is I don't know, there wasn't a lot going on, sadly. If you saw some of the pictures from the social media stuff that I did yesterday, I played a what do you call it? A homebrew game with a family. Honestly, there was the father who wrote it, and then there was the mother, and she was helping out, and then there was a son, and I think the son's what do you call it? She's the, I don't know if she was a girlfriend or maybe fiance. I got the feeling maybe fiance, but anyway. So it was a post-apocalyptic battle on the Thames River in London. So my friend Peter and I, we were in a boat, and we were trying to take supplies down the river, and on the sides of the river there were all these gangs that were trying to stop us, plus there was another boat coming from the other way. And so I don't know, it was kind of fun. I like homebrew games like that. I like going to conventions and playing those types of things, and it was a good time. But that was honestly about most of what was going on. There was a little bit of Drop Fleet Commander at another table, and there was at one point some guys who showed up real late who were supposed to be doing War Machine demos and ended up just playing against each other because they were too late. I kind of wanted to do the War Machine demo, but they didn't make it until noon, even though they were supposed to be there at 10. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. It'll be interesting to see if they can grow it again. But I've got other stuff going on today. It's a 3-day event. It's supposed to be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in the store, and I won't be able to go back today. But we'll see how it goes. Maybe next year. Let's see here. Coventry, England, Ohio, Southeast UK. The Canadian Barbarian says, Adam, I just want to thank you and everyone for all of the suggestions for Gesso Primer. Yeah, Gesso Primer it's kind of cool to, if you're in a situation where you can't spray, either because it's really cold outside or just because you only want to do one guy, maybe, one figure, or, you live in an apartment and whatever the deal is. Gesso it's the stuff that painters, and by painters I mean painters who paint on canvas, it's the stuff that they put on the canvas before they start painting. Because if you put oil paint directly onto raw canvas, over time the oil paint will eat the canvas, and by over time I mean over years and years and years, and then the canvas will fall apart. So this gesso is the layer you put over the canvas so that you can then paint on it, and but it works well in our stuff too. When you put it on, you kind of glop it on. It's just straight. You don't water it down or anything, and then as it dries, it sort of tightens up, and then you don't lose too much detail. Even though when you first glop it on, it looks like you've lost a bunch of detail, but it's interesting to mess with, and works kind of well. And you can even get it in black if you go to the right place. You may have to go online. So let's see here. Soul Crusher says, I recently subscribed a few days ago because I liked the vids where you talked about don't be a hoarder. What do you think about Age of Sigmar and other videos where you were, and what you think about what I think about Age of Sigmar and other videos where you were talking about stuff? Well, I appreciate it, Soul Crusher. I'm glad that you, found something that you liked from the channel. I like to kind of touch on a lot of different subjects. I don't like to necessarily just talk about one thing too frequently. Honestly, talking about Kill Team two episodes in a row for the live show, I was kind of not sure I didn't know if I wanted to do it, but I figured, well, I built these guys since the last show, and I thought, well, I haven't built a lot of other stuff. These guys and some scouts, and that's about it. Otherwise, I've been trying to kind of start to begin to organize the Nerd Bunker, and then, so that's about it. And I thought, well, maybe I'll talk about the convention that I went to yesterday, but then it was, like I said, pretty small, and there wasn't much going on, so there wasn't much to talk about. So if you were listening in the last 5 minutes, I pretty much talked about all of it. So yeah, that's why I'm talking about this Necron stuff, but I'll also be talking about some Age of Sigmar stuff too, because I did have a game recently against a friend of mine. It was his first game. He's playing Sylvaneth, and he painted him up really nicely. If you go look back in some of my social media feed stuff, you'll see the part of the game. It was my Chaos guys versus his Sylvaneth, and he did a really nice job painting them. And we're going to be playing again probably this week, so I'm looking forward to that as well. Alrighty. Tobias says, guys, I got a question. Since I haven't dove that much into the lore of Age of Sigmar, what would be the best enemies for my Sylvaneth army since I'm working on a scenery? What's the best enemies for Sylvaneth? That's a good question. I would probably almost think that Nurgle, honestly. Nurgle or Khorne, because Nurgle's all about decay, and the Sylvaneth, being trees, are all about life and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I would... somebody else back me up if you think about it, but yeah, I bet that could be the case. Paraguay, Madison, Wisconsin, Ontario, California, Gulfport, Mississippi, Tempe, Arizona. Andrew Fairbanks says, hello from West Texas, Adam. Necron kill teams are horribly broken, just so you know. They might be. I don't know. I haven't started to play them yet. My kill team is Probably not too broken because I've never really been able to figure out how to break systems because I'm not a very, I was going to say competitive, but maybe the proper word is competent player. And that's basically my issue, is that I probably won't be able to build the right kind of army to break it, and B, I'm not super a great player to begin with. So even if I was to be, actually by accident build a broken army, I don't know that I'd be able to do much. Plus, the other thing is that I had the guys in the basement already. So you'll see in a little while when I show them off that they're old enough models, they're old enough versions that they're the real light gray plastic that Games Workshop used to do. Like, because honestly, this kit I bought at a scratch and dent sale more than a decade ago. They were the kind of, the box art on the front, which I don't have, it's downstairs in the basement, was back when they used to do like paintings on the front, and it was like an illustration, kind of like the title to the thing. Like, that's kind of like what the artwork looked on the front. It didn't have a picture of the of the actual models. Like, now they have that blue background and they show pictures of painted models on the front, and that's what they do. These are so old that they used to have the artwork on there. So we'll see how it goes. Pigeon Ferguson says, have you considered Deathwatch kill teams for Kill Team? I have, but I don't have the codex. That is the one downside to Kill Team, is I do wish that I wish we had the War Scrolls thing like in Age of Sigmar going on, so you could just go quickly download and take a look at what the stats are for them. Like, if I wanted to do a Death Watch, I'd have to go by the Death Watch codex, and then if it turned out I didn't like it, and well, now I have a Death Watch codex that I'm never going to use. You know what I mean? And I don't know anybody who has one that I could just borrow, so I'll figure it out eventually. But I do think the models are really cool. I like how they're all painted black except for the one silver shoulder pad and then the chapter pad for the chapter they came from. Let's see here. Brooklyn, New York. Afternoon/morning from cold England. Yeah, it's not going to be cold here today. It's going to be in the mid-60s Fahrenheit, so let's see here. Hey, Adam, do you... Oh, that went away. I'm going to try to scroll up and catch some of those. We got a lot of stuff going on here. Hey, Adam, have you been painting lately? How's work been? I've finally decided to use my Space Hulk NIDs for my kill team. Well, that's kind of a cool idea, using your Space Hulk Gene Stealers for your kill team. I've not been painting. I've been in build mode. I've been predominantly just... That's the thing, is I have a tendency to alternate back and forth, because just honestly, sometimes it's because I get stuck, or I lose my motivation to paint, so I start building, just to keep motivation in general for hobby. Other times it's out of necessity. I need to get a bunch of things built so that I can then paint them. So probably once I get these Necron guys finished, and I get the scouts finished for Kill Team, then I will be in paint mode for a good long time, because I've got these guys to paint, I've got the Kill Team for scouts to paint, and I've also got a whole bunch of skeletons that need to be painted. They're already all primed, so they're ready for that next step. I've got some Vargeists, 3 Vargeists that need to be painted. I've got my Hex Wraiths, there's 5 of those guys. They've all been, they're all textured and ready to go. Those guys still need to be primed. The Terrorgeist as well, he needs to be primed and painted. But all the skeletons are already even a step beyond that, in that they're primed, and they're primed bone color, so it's basically like a base coat. So yeah, I'll be very soon, after I get this stuff done, I will be moving into paint mode for quite some time. So I kind of alternate back and forth, but I haven't painted in a couple of weeks because I've been doing so much building. So let's see here. Utah, Scarborough, UK, London. Josh says, I've always wanted to paint some Necrons up, but never wanted a whole army, so I've been thinking about doing a kill team for them as well. Exactly. I've never wanted a whole army either, but basically about 13 models. Yeah, that's why I'm interested in it. That's why I'm doing it. So yeah, guard kill team for the win, according to Patrick. Oh, that's interesting. I guess I've never... Well, I mean, you'd have a lot of them, I suppose. But yeah, no, I haven't played against anybody... Gosh, I haven't played against anybody who has a guard in a really long time, so I haven't played against guard in a really long time. I mean, to be fair, I haven't played 40k in more than a year, almost a year and a half, if not longer. But even back in the day, I only knew one guard player, I think. So, let's see here. Hello from Midland, Texas. My Chaos kill team looks good while losing. Yeah, see, I need to figure out what I've done with my Chaos. I've got a Chaos Codex, because I used to play Chaos Space Marines. I've got one in the basement somewhere. I've got to find it, because I do have a bunch of painted Chaos. I could probably pull together a relatively inefficient kill team and crank that out. just out of the guys I already have done. And so when I find it, I'll probably look into that. And like I said, they will most likely lose, but yeah. Let's see here. I'm working on an Ordos Xenos kill team. Inquisitor, 2 henchmen, 2 Deathwatch, a lot of fun. Thanks to you, Adam. Well, I appreciate it, and I'm glad that you're liking it. I've got a bunch of Inquisitor models, actually, in the basement, because back when the Inquisitor, kind of digital codex came out, I was thinking I was going to add an Inquisitorial ally warband or whatever to my, at the time, regular Space Marines. So I went on to eBay and I found used stuff, and I went to a couple different kind of like Wargaming rummage sales, actually, like, swap meets and stuff, and I picked up some cool models and I stripped them because a lot of them were painted terribly, and they were old, metal models. So I've got a bunch of those old models that I don't think I'm going to end up using anymore. So, and from what I understand, well, here's the thing, though. I don't know if you could even have an Inquisitor kill team, can you? Because you can't, there's no HQs in kill team, and so an Inquisitor would be a HQ. I would double check the rules on that to make sure, now that I come to think of it, because I thought to myself, well, heck, I've got the Inquisitor digital codex, why don't I just do that? But I'm not 100% sure you can do that. So take a look at the kill team rules. Like I said, there's no HQ units in kill team, so I don't know that an Inquisitor would be allowed. And I don't know that there's any troops in the Inquisitor book. So you need to have 2 troops at the bare minimum. So yeah, I'm not sure that it's going to work out for you. So double check on the rules and see how it goes. At the very least, they're a lot of fun to paint and stuff like that. But yeah. So yeah. Was there a reason you're not using the Chaos Marines in Kill Team? Is it the size of the team? Honestly, it's just that I haven't been able to find the codex yet. But I will probably eventually at least give it a try, because like I said, I have a lot of Chaos stuff painted already, so I might as well. Let's see here. Spite says, oh snap, howdy Adam. Chris from Mini Wargaming sent me. Oh, well, excellent. Glad to see you. I haven't unfortunately got to talk to Chris in quite some time. Chris and Wargamer Girl, she has a mainly War Machine channel on YouTube. The 3 of us used to do a show on, like, I don't know, the last Thursday of the month, every month. It was a live show we would do, and we would talk about movies, sort of. That was the plan. It was called Cinematic Wargamers, and we never really stuck to our schedule too well. I mean, we stuck to when we did it, but we never, we just kind of rambled, and it was okay. But it was a lot of fun, just the 3 of us talking at the very least. And I hung out with Chris at Adepticon earlier this year, and he was supposed to come to Valhalla back in the beginning of October, but then he couldn't make it for some sort of, I think, family reasons or something. He had something else going on that he couldn't get out of, so I didn't get a chance to talk to him then. But he's a good guy, and I'm glad that he sent you over here, so that's cool. Let's see here. Surge says, yeah, thanks to 7th edition, I had to clean and dismount my Flyrant with Listerine. He smells so nicely now. I didn't know you could strip paint with Listerine. That's interesting. I'll have to take a look. He probably smells very minty-ish, kind of, sort of a medicine-y minty. That's interesting. Stuart asks, do your models need to be WYSIWYG for Kill Team? I mean, does anything need to be WYSIWYG ever? I mean, if you're just playing with your friends and you're like, yeah, remember this guy's a flamer, he's not actually a melt-a-gun guy. If you go to a tournament and they're like, oh yeah, you should be, well then that's their rule. But when you're playing in your basement, you don't have to. I kind of prefer to make them that way, but sometimes you just proxy with what you've got to try out a new list. So, WYSIWYG is like, things are really only ever required when they're actually required, like at a tournament, but when you and your friend are playing, you guys can make up whatever rules and, house rules and decisions and determinations that you want, I think. Let's see here. Thinking of a Necron kill team with 6 Tomb Blades and 5 Immortals. I'm familiar with Tomb Blades, I don't know much about Immortals. I know that you gotta have 2 troops, and I don't know if Tomb Blades count as troops, or are they elites, because you got to have at least 2 troops, from what I understand, in Kill Team, to basically make a legal list, and no HQs. So, which is a bummer somewhat, because sometimes I really like the look of HQs, like some of the really cool. I saw one yesterday when I was at this convention. I was looking just at the stuff at the shop, and there was a really cool, like, Necron Overlord or something model, and I was like, oh, that guy's really cool. And I thought, well, there's no reason to buy him because I can't use him in Kill Team, so I don't bother. Let's see here. Inquisition kill team is Heralds of Ruin rules. Oh yeah, sure. If you play the Heralds of Ruin version of kill team, then yeah, you could totally use those guys. Absolutely. So that'd be a good point. Let's see here. Mini Wargaming got me into Wargaming, but Adam got me into the hobby itself. Well, I'm glad to hear it, Spite. That's good. I mean, they do a lot of work, especially Chris specifically. He does a lot of work on the hobby stuff at Mini Wargaming, but their business model kind of is that they mostly lead the free. They put out the free bat reps, but if you want to get a lot of the tutorial stuff, they do some tutorial on their normal YouTube channel, but a lot of the tutorial stuff that you want to watch about painting and building and all that kind of stuff, that's the stuff that's behind the paywall that you become a Vault member and then you get access to thousands of different videos, which is cool. So, yeah. Candy Roo is asking what WYSIWYG stands for. WYSIWYG stands for what you see is what you get. So when you look at a model and he's got a flamethrower on him, then you know that that's the flamethrower guy, as opposed to, you know, sometimes you'd be like, okay, well, this guy with the flamethrower, he's actually got a melt-a-gun, because I don't have a guy with a melt-a-gun on him right now. There are times when there are certain, especially, again, like I said, tournaments and events and things like that, where WYSIWYG is very important, because then that way your opponent can just glance across the table and be like, okay, well, that guy's got a laser cannon or whatever, so I got to be wary of him. And when in actuality, if you're not playing WYSIWYG, that figure may not have a laser cannon or whatever. So, you know, there's that kind of stuff. But yeah. Eugene says, no, you don't need troops for kill team. 0 to 2. Oh, that's right. No, you're right. That's a good point, Eugene. It's 0 to 2. It's not, yeah, because otherwise it would be 2 plus. I'm getting it mixed up with regular, I'm getting it mixed up with regular 40k, where you have to have at least an HQ and 2 units in most situations. 2 troops. You're right. But you can't have more than 2 troops. So yeah, you could totally just go with all elites if you really wanted to, but then, again, you only have 200 points, so then you have a much limited number. So I appreciate that. I did not, yeah. That's true. It's 0 to 2 troops. It's up to 1 elite and up to 1 fast, but no heavy support, and no HQ. Right. Let's see here. Immortals or troops? See, I haven't even looked at Immortals. I've only been looking at the Warriors because I already had Warriors in the basement, so I just kind of did that. Mars says hi from San Diego. Hello. Let's see here. Adam, what are your thoughts on War Machine's differences in Warhammer? On War Machine differences in Warhammer? I'm sorry, Fred, I guess I don't understand the question. What are your thoughts on War Machine differences in Warhammer? On how War Machine's different than Warhammer? Gosh, there's a lot of different ways. And to be fair, I haven't played I haven't played War Machine in a long time. So one of the reasons why I wanted to do a demo yesterday at that major minicon. So yeah, I mean, it's a very different, I can tell you definitely it's steampunk versus high fantasy. It's, you know, there's a lot more robots, which is cool. But yeah, and you know, the style is you have this one figure in your army who, in most situations, if that figure gets killed, you lose the game. So that's a very different thing than in, say, like Age of Sigmar or whatever, or even 40k, where, I mean, I lose my main general all the time in Age of Sigmar, so that doesn't, you know, lose me the game, which is helpful. Let's see here. My Empire army is so big because of WYSIWYG. Yeah, a lot of people, what they'll do to make WYSIWYG work out well for them and not have their army be humongous is they'll magnetize stuff. So I've got a friend who's got a Blood Angel army that he's been building for years, frankly, but he does. He magnetizes tons of stuff. So he's got models who he's got the backpack magnetized, and this is 40k. So it can be either a regular backpack or it can be a jump jet backpack. He's got both arms magnetized so that they could be like, you know, they could be holding a bolter, they could be holding a flamer. He's got so much stuff. So he does all this extra work, but then he only has to have this one guy that he can just swap the parts out on, and they go, okay, now that guy's this, and okay, now this guy's that. So, yeah, you know, you can go that direction. In the past, I've done some relatively simple magnetizing where in 40k, I'd be like, well, sometimes I want this guy to have a plasma pistol, because he's a sergeant, and other times I don't want him to have a plasma pistol because I don't want to pay the 15 points or whatever it is. So, a very simple magnetizing, like one arm on, that's kind of fun. I've done it also with some Terminators as well, because in 6th edition, I think, 6th or 7th, all of a sudden they changed power weapons, where power weapons just used to be power weapons, and then all of a sudden it was, well, power axes do this, and power swords do that, and power mauls do that. So there were times when you wanted to swap back and forth. So I did some magnetizing that way, and some different Terminator models, and they worked out pretty well. So the Salem 777 says, how many points are spent in Kill Team? 200. Actually, a lot of people answered that, so good on you. Yeah, so 200 points in Kill Team generally. Rick Scandon says, would you ever try the Herald of Ruin Kill Team rule set? I have. Actually, one of the last games of 40K that I played, maybe the last 2 games of 40K that I played, were technically Herald of Ruin Kill Team. So, for those of you that don't know, Kill Team, like normal Kill Team, is made by Games Workshop, and it's a thing that you buy from them. It's, if you buy that, I did a video a little while ago about the new starter box that comes out. The booklet's in there. Otherwise, you can get an e-booklet from them, through your iPad or your whatever, or you can just download a PDF from them that they'll sell you, I think. And that's just the rules that work that way. This group, I think they're a group of guys, and they have a gaming blog, and it's called the Heralds of Ruin. And they decided to make their own version of Kill Team. Now, in my opinion, it would have been smart of them not to call it Kill Team, because calling it Kill Team just invites Games Workshop's ire. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a little surprised they haven't gotten sued, although I suppose the term Kill Team is maybe generic enough, but whatever. So Heralds of Ruin's version of Kill Team is very different than Games Workshop's. You still need to have a codex for each dude, and you still need to have the normal book. Not each dude, but each army. But then the lists, you don't use the codex for the lists, you use them just mainly for like the special rules and things like that. They have completely rewritten the lists for their version of Kill Team. So, there are no more like named guys generally. It's just like, oh, there's this type of captain, and they make their own stats, and there's all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of downloading and all that, which is great, and it's all free. Because if they were charging for it, man, they would seriously get the pantsuit off of them. But I don't know. I guess I didn't like the different stats and all that kind of stuff, and I don't know why. But I played it twice, and it did not work out in the way that I liked. So yeah, I have given it a try, and it didn't quite get to me. Let's see here. Hey, Adam, how do you make armies that are primarily 1 or 2 colors very colorful? I would probably add a lot more metallics, a lot more metallic trim, golds, silvers, bronzes, brass, coppers, that kind of stuff. I mean, that's one way that I could think of. I mean, if you're talking about, let's say, I don't know, what's his name there, Ultramarines, they're mostly blue. You could add a lot of gold trim to them. That would work out well. Something like Blood Angels, you could add a lot of like silver trim, I think would be good. Like, there's certain colors that won't work. If you're mostly red models because you're Blood Angels and you have copper trim, I think that would be like a kind of a clashing color and it wouldn't work out super well. But that's just off the top of my head, like options that I could see. Yeah. Let's see here. Spite says, me and my wife play Malifaux. I've been trying to get her to play low point games of 40K. She isn't interested. She loves the fluff, but hates the crunch. Can Kill Team change her mind? Well, maybe. It's still pretty crunchy because the rules are the rules. There's just far fewer guys, or models in that case. So, you're still using the same rule book for 40K. In Kill Team, you're still using the same codex for the army. You just have a lot less guys to focus on. So maybe that's a benefit. Maybe she can work off of that if she's like, there's just too much. Well, if she, like in my, Kill Team army that I'm going to show you in a little bit, there's really only 2 figures in the army that you have to keep track of. There's warriors, so that's one stat line, and then there's tomb blades. There's just going to be 3 tomb blades in the army, which I don't have built yet, and that's the other stat line. So in that situation, it's just very simple. So I don't know. Like in comparison to Malifaux, if she was running a crew of, let's say, 6 in Malifaux, that's 6 different cards with 6 different stat lines that she's got to keep track of and special powers and all that stuff. So maybe it'll even out that way. I don't know. That's a good question. Let's see here. Depending on the mini. Hey Adam, would you be playing 40k right now if it wasn't for Kill Team? Probably not, honestly. I'm really enjoying Age of Sigmar, and like I said, one of the main reasons that I'm looking at Kill Team is because it's so small, because I can get away with small units, and I can make a bunch of different, like I can have a pretty easily, quickly built Space Marine army, mostly scouts. I can have a pretty easily and quickly built Necron army. If I can find my codex for Chaos, I'll be able to probably just pull a Chaos army out of my backside, because I've already got a bunch of the stuff painted and ready to go. So if there was no Kill Team, and I probably wouldn't be getting back into 40k right now, just because there's a lot of stuff going on there. So yeah. Let's see here. Marines come with a lot of options, but the right amount of arms. Sometimes bits need to come from eBay. Can get expensive. Yeah, I've bought bits from eBay in the past. I've had more luck personally going to small conventions. Well, not small conventions, actually. I take that back. I've gone to like Adepticon, which is not a small convention, and then Gen Con, which is really not a small convention. But there's a store. I think they're based out of Toledo, Ohio, and they go to these conventions and they bring bits, and the guy is known as the bits guy, and you just paw through these giant Tupperware Rubbermaid containers that are just filled with little tiny Ziploc bags that have like some Space Marine heads in them, and it'll say $1 on them or whatever, and you just go through and you look for stuff, and that's how I originally, when I was getting into Chaos Space Marines, that's how I really kind of built out my bits collection. The other thing too is that every time you build stuff, when you're done building the stuff from the kit, you cut off all the rest of the bits and put them into like one of those plastic dividers that you use for like fishing lures, those clear plastic things, like from Plano is a big manufacturer in those things. You just put all your stuff in there and organize it that way, so that at some point down the road you're like, oh, I need a different arm, and then you're like, oh, there was a couple arms I didn't use on this guy, and then you go back and you find them, and it works out pretty well. Not with every army though. I didn't find, because Tau were my first army, one of the reasons I stopped playing Tau, besides the fact at the time they were constantly getting whooped, well, I was constantly getting whooped, and also was because I couldn't do a lot of cool conversions. The Tau are pretty much the Tau. If you want to go the exact opposite, then you go Orcs, in my mind, because the Orcs convert everything all the time, whereas the Tau are very, you don't get a lot of extra pieces generally. You don't go, well, you know what I could do with this Tau? I could cover him in more skulls. That'd be pretty cool. Nobody does that with Tau. The Tau are not into that. So, yeah, you can get fancy with the paint jobs, but you can't get super fancy with the converting, in my mind, the building. So, let's see here. Spite says, I gotta run. I will catch the rest of this later. Good to see you live, Adam. Thanks for the advice. Peace. Indeed, peace. Slime Man says, hey Adam, do you think the Grand Alliance Destruction Ogars are overpowered? Gosh, I don't really know. I've never played against the Ogars, I don't think. What have I done? I've played against other destruction armies. I've played against the River Trolls, which are destruction. I think they're kind of overpowered. My friend, one of the friends I play with, he has a tendency to run River Trolls with a Megaboss, Orc leader guy. And they are tough. They are, because they're very tough. They also hit real hard. They have a 6-inch melee weapon, or not melee weapon, sorry, a 6-inch missile weapon, which is basically them throwing up. It's a disgusting vomit attack, and they're these river trolls, and the models are great, actually. They're great models, because you can see, like, the vomiting coming out, and there's like fish bones in it and all kinds of stuff like that and whatever, but it's brutal. And because of the way that Age of Sigmar works, where you can use your missile attack even if you're in combat with somebody, so you basically kind of get like 2 attacks, because you can do a melee attack and also a missile attack. It's yeah, they're super tough. I don't know anything else about that particular part of the army, so I don't know if they're overpowered or not, but let's see here. Are you going to play the new Space Hulk video game? I don't know. I have played some of the video games. Actually, lately on my iPad, I've been playing Inquisition. No. Death Watch. I'm not sure which one it is. I've been playing one of them, and it's kind of a nice turn-based thing. I think it's Death Watch, yeah. And that one's a lot of fun, actually. I do enjoy that. I mean, I kind of wish it was visually just a little bit more appealing. It's very top-down. And I kind of wish it was maybe at a little bit more of an angle or like a little bit of an isometric sort of something or other. But I understand, I guess, why it's top-down. But it's fun. It's just basically a bunch of Death Watch Marines shooting up Gene Stealers, and it's turn-based, and it's interesting. And I don't know how well it would work on a phone, but it works pretty well on my iPad, so there's that. Let's see here. Tim says, if you want 40k fluff with less rules, look for In the Emperor's Name. It is a free set of rules online. I've downloaded that too, but I don't know that I've gotten anybody to play it with. I've looked through it, but I've come across it in the past, yeah. In the Emperor's Name is kind of an interesting little rule set. Yeah, it's again, it's one of those things where you're like, gosh, I'm surprised they're not getting sued, but they're giving it away for free, and so I suppose it's one of those things where Games Workshop is like, well, it gets people buying models, and so that's something. But yeah. Chuckle Loaf. That's a fun name. I like saying that. Kill Team is generating lots of new interest in 40k and Games Workshop in general. In my neck of the woods, I am running into the No Man's Land event for my friendly local game store, FLGS, and the interest is very high. Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear about it. I'm glad that they're doing kind of an organized thing for Kill Team. It makes a lot of sense. So that's good. I'm going to... I have allergies. So right now my nose is running a little bit, so I'm just going to, for just a split second, I'm going to just take a quick little technical difficulty break and kind of blow my nose a little bit. So I'll be back in just a split sec. Okay. Much better. All right, so, and you didn't have to sit through that, so that's good too. Let's see here. Tyler says, hi, Adam, bought Kill Team on your suggestion. Currently painting them up and was wondering what to get next. Well, I mean, technically the Space Marines in that box can make up a full, almost 200-point Kill Team right there, so you should be set with that. With the Tau... From what I understand, they are, in that box set, there's maybe only 130 points or so of Tau. So yeah, you might look into maybe some, I don't know the points super well anymore these days for Tau, but you might look into some battle suits, potentially, because they should be, I think, elites, and you should at least be able to take a couple of battle suits. That might help out. Let's see here. Adam, if you have not got it yet, Trader's Hate is well worth the bucks. I just saw it at the local store like yesterday, and I should look into it and see what it's about, because I don't quite know what it is. Nex asks, how do you choose paint schemes? I'm stuck between white and red or tan and dark green for my guard. I do it a couple of different ways. Sometimes I take a picture of the model with my cell phone or something, convert it to black and white. Now, this is the dork in me, don't get me wrong. I convert it to black and white in like Photoshop, and then I go in Photoshop and I actually sort of color things in Photoshop. So I take a black and white version of it and I tweak it a bit, and then I go, you can draw like a layer underneath the black and white and then be like, oh, I'm going to add a little bit of red to the pants here, and then you look at it and go, is that right? And you can do that. That's one way. Another way you can do it is to just paint up one of each as test models. Or go on to eBay. Like if you don't want to paint the ones you're going to use yet, you can go on to eBay and try to find some other guard that are already pre-painted or whatever, just garbage ones, and then go from there and give it a try. Sometimes it's just best to test. It's just the way it works. But if you want to do it without paint, you could also try it, like I said, with the Photoshop or whatever. I was going to do a video actually about kind of how I do it, but obviously not everyone's got Photoshop because that's not what they do for a job. It's what I do for a job partially, so that's why I have it. So I was going to use this cool this web version kind of Photoshop called Pixlr, And then that particular night, it was not working particularly well. There was all kinds of problems, and so I didn't do a video about that. But that's one way you can do it. If you've got some sort of photo editing software, that's one thing you can do is take a picture of the model, like kind of close up, turn it to black and white. Make a layer underneath, make the top layer, usually set it to multiply, go through all that stuff. It's not particularly easy, but for me it's easy because I've been doing it for 20 plus years. So that's one way to do it without actually putting brush on or paint on your brush. But the other better way generally is to just test on either models, because honestly, if you paint two of them, you do one way and one the other way. If you like one of them, then you just strip the other one. So that's a potential too. And it doesn't take that long. Hey, is it normal that I'm afraid to glue the syringe to my Malifaux nurse? The figures seem very hard to... Malifaux figures are spectacular looking. That being said, they are very, very difficult to build for some people, especially people new to the hobby. So yeah, Malifaux figures are very slight, especially Malifaux figures do not have the heroic scale thing that Games Workshop's going on, where like every Imperial Guardsman's got a wrist that's like this big around it. Like, they are too normal scale and they're very fine. So yeah, there's a lot of potential for bustage in Malifaux. So you need to be kind of careful and go slowly. That's your best bet. Let's see. Are there Tau players who don't take crisis suits in Kill Team? I don't know. I haven't played against any Tau players yet. I know there are no crisis suits in the Kill Team starter box, so you should be able to maybe, like I said, I think you should be able to put some into your list potentially if that's what you want to. If you get the starter box, you should be able to at least probably put some in your list and go from there. Hey there, just getting into 40k and I have a small Grey Knights force for the base game, but was wondering, can I play Kill Team with a section of my force? You can play with Grey Knights, but from what I understand, Grey Knights players in some situations don't particularly like Kill Team because Kill Team does not let you use Psychers. And since basically all Grey Knights are Psychers, they don't get to use any of their cool Psyker powers. So at that point, you're paying more points because they have these cool psychic abilities that you can't use in Kill Team. So I don't know that they're real optimized for it. You could certainly play them and have a good time, especially if you just wanted to kind of get into some Kill Team and see how things go. That's cool too. But you can't, from what I understand, one of the downsides of that is that because they're Psychers and you can't use psychic stuff in Kill Team, that's kind of a problem. So let's see here. I'm considering making a Kill Team based on the Bloodraven characters from Dawn of War 2. Well, that'd be cool. Yeah, Bloodraven have been actually Dawn of War 2, Dawn of War 1. I think they're going to be in Dawn of War 3 too, or 3 also. Yeah, so I don't. Did they ever make? You guys might know this. I don't know. Did they ever actually make like molded shoulder pads for Bloodravens? Because they really ought to have. I bet a lot of people would have bought them and kind of enjoyed them. They were kind of a cool paint scheme. I liked them. I played Dawn of War 1, and I played Dawn of War 2 a little bit, but I didn't like Dawn of War 2 as much. I'm kind of looking forward to Dawn of War 3, even though I haven't really been playing much in the way of video games lately, but I might think about checking it out once it comes out, or maybe a bit later. Chuckleloaf says, I pay a more skilled modeling friend to assemble my Malifaux models. They are nuts. I have, yeah. Like, I've not had any problems building mine, but I've only built, well, my earliest ones were all metal, and they didn't have that problem at all. When they moved to plastic, they went really crazy with the dynamic poses and tons of detail. I know there are certain models in the line that people just, mention the name and shudder because, like there's some sort of Asian kind of like monk guy, and I can't think of his name, but he has like a beard that you have to glue onto his face, and it's like 3 millimeters long. It's just absolutely tiny, and people are like, I can't even clip it off the sprue without destroying it. And it's, yeah, so I think it's one of those deals where maybe Malifaux or Weird Games decided, well, we want to make some really great looking models, so let's just totally like go the other way. Like, Games Workshop's been getting more and more detailed. Why don't we try to immediately jump beyond them in detail and then go from there? And I think that maybe that's been problems a little bit for, newer modelers. But the game, I mean, Lord knows Malifaux's growing and growing. So, yeah. JC Lander says, yep, there are modded Bloodraven pads available. That's cool. I think that's kind of neat. Let's see here. James Davis says, you can use psychic powers in Kill Team. Merely Brotherhood Psychers Sorcerers is disabled. If you're a Harlequin player, you can take a Shadow Seer at Mastery Level 1 or 2. In Kill Team? Really? I'll have to go... I thought that there was no Psychers, and there was no Terminators because... Well, you can't have Terminators in Kill Team because they're 2-up save. I know that. But I didn't think that you could have any Psychic stuff in Kill Team. I'll have to go back and look at the book. And again, we're talking about regular Games Workshop Kill Team, not the Heralds of Ruin one. Let's see here. Forge World made a transfer sheet for the Blood Raven. That seems like something the Forge World would do. That makes sense. Yeah, transfers for the Blood Ravens make sense too. And Esmin says that Blood Raven's army is in this month's White Dwarf. That's really cool. Interesting. And there's one molded shoulder pad in the new Deathwatch library. Oh, okay, that makes sense. I think because I know that one of the new Deathwatch kits that they put out had tons of extra shoulder pads in it, and tons from all kinds of different chapters and stuff, like chapters that have never had shoulder pads before. So that'll be interesting, yeah, to see like if people start selling those like hardcore on eBay. You know what I mean? And maybe then Games Workshop will be like, we should put more time and effort into making more shoulder pads for people because people will buy them. Like, they have a kit you can buy, like a little clamshell kit that just has a bunch of add-on stuff for Ultramarines. Now, I understand Ultramarines are kind of like the most popular, but I bet if they made a little kit like that for a lot of other ones, Blood Angels, Space Wolves, I mean, a lot of these other armies, and then you start getting into the weirder armies too, people would buy them. I mean, obviously, when you make it out of plastic, when it's hard plastic, it's very expensive to make that mold. So I get that. But over time, I'm sure that they would eventually sell. I'm not a business person, so I'm sure that they've got their reasons, but yeah. Let's see here. Chad Ashton says, being a YouTuber with a good following, who do you follow in regards to gaming and hobby? Oh, gosh. Well, let's see. I watch Andy2D6 from, I think he's in Manchester. I watch his stuff frequently. I used to watch his Age of Sigmar show, the Andy and Rem show, on Tuesday afternoons because I could do it when I was sort of underemployed, but now I'm at work at that time, so now I generally have a tendency to watch them a little bit later. I don't watch them live, so I watch the recordings frequently. Who else do I watch? I watch a bunch of Vince Venturella's stuff. He does really good work as well. He mainly focuses, for the most part, on kind of fantasy, but he's a very good painter, and he does good work that way. I've watched a bunch of... What else? I've watched a bunch of Les Bursley, although he hasn't really been producing a ton of stuff lately, but I've watched his stuff. I watch Wargamer Girl, because even though I don't play War Machine, the Bat Reps are really good. Like, she and her husband do really good work on those, and so that's really fun. And I do watch a decent amount of mini wargaming. I don't watch a ton of the Bat Reps, but I do watch some of them. So yeah, that's kind of some of the people I can think of off the top of my head that I follow on YouTube and stuff. So yeah, let's see here. I love your show. I don't play war games, but I play D&D, and I use your painting tutorials. Excellent. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I try to keep things a little bit more sometimes generalized, because it's not just for people who are playing war games, but it's for people who are playing Dungeons and Dragons and are trying to paint up a model to be their guy, or maybe to paint up a bunch of orcs or kobolds or whatever, that kind of stuff. So it works out nicely that way. Yeah, so I think I'm glad that people are doing it. I mean, there are probably even some people who are watching who don't play games at all, but do like to paint models. Maybe they want to learn some things that way too, so that's cool. Let's see here. I've recently got an Age of Sigmar starter box, and I'm planning to paint Stormcast army in Bloodraven scheme. Oh, that's cool. Stormcast are my eventual third army, probably, for Age of Sigmar when I get to that point, down the road, and I still don't really have a great plan for how I want to paint them. I find stuff from time to time, like people will post stuff on the Tabletop Minions Paint Showcase Club on Facebook, or they'll post things here and there, and I'll just be like, oh, that's really cool. and then I will save a picture just so that down the road when when the time comes and I'm trying to figure out my paint scheme, I can look a bunch of pictures I've saved and I'm like, well, I like this and this, but I don't like this accent color, or whatever, so I can hopefully do that kind of thing. But that's another way to kind of plan out how you're going to do your army, is look at other people's stuff and save pictures on your desktop or your phone or whatever, and then go back and look at them later and then go, I think I can put this together and kind of work it that way. So, Surge, no, I do, like I said, I do watch many Wargaming as well. Melanie says, I need a bit of advice. I glued together my Valkyries resin made by Prodos. How do I get them apart? Glued with super glue. Is there any way, or am I screwed? There's stuff that you can get that's known as CA glue debonder. Frankly, it smells a lot like fingernail polish remover. But I don't know that I would use fingernail polish remover. But there's debonder. You could do that and give it a try. But I would touch a little bit of that stuff onto a different part of the model or onto some of the sprue if they're resin and see if it eats it or not. That'd be one thing. Another thing, as I hear, is that people will just put them in the freezer and then just slowly try to work the joint to kind of break them apart. My concern is that putting them in the freezer might make the resin a little bit more brittle as well. So yeah, that's going to be a tough one, but I would give that a try. Yeah, that's something I would take a look at. Serge says Listerine also works for super glue, oddly. Yeah, that is odd. Maybe give that a try. Whatever you do, I would definitely, because you're using resin, I would definitely test it on a scrap piece of that same resin before, just to see what it's going to do to it. But yeah, definitely. Let's see here. Melanie, I put old War Machine minis in the freezer. Yeah, a bunch of people are saying freezer. Again, like I said, though, I'd be a little concerned about the resin itself getting a bit more brittle and going that direction. Patrick says, I would love to see more non-gold Stormcast Eternals. I have 5 Liberators from eBay that I'm going to start to paint green and bronze to fit into my Realm of Beast free build Order army. Yeah, I could see doing like... It'd be interesting to paint them bronze and then give them that kind of green, kind of verdigris patina. I think that'd be kind of an interesting thing to do. Most of the color schemes that I've been saving have been honestly mostly like silver metallic, then with black, and maybe a bit of red for like the, like some of them don't have a loincloth per se, but they have like leather strips kind of like in the loincloth area, if you know what I mean. And so those bits could probably be red. The handles on their hammers, I could see those wraps being in red. A lot of the parchment stuff that they have hanging off of them, I'm still going to just do in regular parchment. And either way, just in my mind, that just makes sense. But I think that maybe silver with like black, especially like the guys with the big shields, like if the top part was silver and then that bottom part where the hammer is, if most of that was like a black color or at least a very, very, very dark gray, that'd be kind of cool. It might be a little bit monochromatic going between silver and black, but I think it'd be kind of cool. Let's see here. Kill Team is more like a skirmish game. How does it compare to Infinity? It's very different than Infinity. One of Infinity's biggest things is the ability to react in your opponent's turn. So if you have a guy sitting over here, and then on your opponent's turn, this other guy kind of moves in front of him or whatever, or goes between this box and this box. You can't see it, sorry. And so basically this guy can now see this guy on his turn. Even though it's not your turn, you can fire at that guy, which is kind of interesting. They call it ARO, automatic, I don't know what ARO stands for. Something about reaction, I think is what the R stands for. So you guys probably know what ARO stands for. Anywho, that's kind of a neat mechanic that you don't particularly have in 40K. There's a bunch of other stuff in there's a bunch of other stuff in Infinity that I'm not a super big fan of. Personally, just I don't kind of like some of the things in the actual mechanics of the game system, and I'm not a big fan of the artwork. The lore seems okay, but I don't know a ton about it. So for me, it's not a thing. But I would say that they probably, honestly, I would say 40K has got a little bit less of a learning curve too, at least for the rule set. I could be wrong, but it seems to me, maybe it's just because I've been playing 40K for enough years that it just seems a lot more obvious. But going through and reading the rules for Infinity, I generally don't get them. They're confusing to me, and I've played two different demos with it now. One with Sam, actually, Sam Lenz, painter, and then I played one at Adepticon, and it just has not stuck with me yet. Let's see here. RoboCrash says, it's so hard to pick a color scheme for my orcs. How do you come up with a scheme you like? Well, I kind of touched on it a bit here. You can take a look at other people's schemes that you find on the internet, save a bunch of them in a folder, and then kind of look at them and think about what you want to do. Maybe piece them together if you get fancy with like a program like Photoshop or GIMP or whatever, and just start going, well, if I, but you can kind of do things like that. You can also do test models, like I said. Try that. There used to be, I don't know if there still is, there used to be a website where you could take, they had like a black and white drawing of a space marine, like a line drawing, and then you could pick different parts of them and then change the colors, and then they'd be like, oh, this is what my scheme's going to look like. And that's really cool, but they don't have it for anything other than space marines. Like, there's not one for orcs, there's not one for guardsmen, there's not one for Eldar that I know of. So that's kind of a bummer. I kind of do wish that you had that ability. I wish that Games Workshop, if Games Workshop was smart, what they would do is they would make 3D models, which I know they already have 3D models, of iconic figures from each army, like a Gene Stealer, a Space Marine, a Guardsman, that kind of stuff. And then you could go to the website and then you could apply their paint colors to the shoulder pads, the legs, the whatever, all that stuff, and figure out what your scheme is going to be. And then now over here on the side, you've got a list that says, oh, well, you need this red and that blue and blah, blah. And now you know what to buy. So it's like a showroom for their paints. It wouldn't be, I wouldn't be able to do it. But if I worked on a team that, had a bunch of programmers in it, we could do it. It'd be a thing that would be doable. Lord knows it's that kind of stuff has kind of even been done. There's a website from a company out there called Hero Forge, and they make a 3D model. Like, basically you can build yourself a 3D model and then they will 3D print it and mail it to you. And it's like $25. But they have all the different parts in there and all that stuff. And I'm just talking about just changing colors, not even changing parts. Like, you have a model of a Space Marine, and then you just go through and say, shoulder pad is this color, and this is this color, and then you can see it and then see the list of stuff. This wouldn't be super difficult, but they kind of don't go that way. So, let's see here. They can have that one for free. If they make it, awesome. Let's see here. Silver and black Stormcast sound amazing, and also like my Christmas decorations. Okay. Black and deep red has been intriguing me recently, having got a massive gold-purple Lions of Sigmar army already. That'd be kind of cool, yeah. I could see like a deep red, like a bright red, I think, with black and silver might be. Well, but I really don't like the color maroon or burgundy, so it'd be a fine line that I would have to watch there, yeah. Let's see here. Andrew asks, hey, Adam, ever used P3 paint? No. I want to, but nobody in my area sells it. So that's kind of a thing. I would like to start painting because Sam likes it. Sam got a whole bunch of P3 paint because he won the Privateer Press P3 Grandmaster competition at Gen Con 2014. Like, he was best in show at their big paint competition of the year, 2014. So they gave him, money and stuff like that. And then they also were like, oh, here you go, and then dumped a whole bunch of paint on him, which is awesome. So he likes their paint quite a bit, so he was very happy to get a whole bunch of it. And it's from what I understand, it's higher pigment count, and it's supposed to be cool stuff, and I would really like to use it around here, but I don't, not available to buy in my local area. Let's see. Guys, do you know if battles in the Age of Sigmar where miniatures numbers around 20 per side make sense? Yeah, honestly, 1,000 points, my Chaos Army at 1,000 points is around 20 models, maybe a little bit less. I think last time I played 1,000 points, I had 10 Warriors of Chaos, 5 Blake Kings, my Rotbringer Sorcerer, my Lord of Plagues, and something else, but I don't remember what else. And so, yeah, 20 models in Age of Sigmar is not a tiny, but it's usually 1,000 points generally. So, yeah, it would work out quite well. Old Man B says, what do you use to fill gap lines? I usually try to use, sometimes I'll use super glue and then add a little bit of baking soda to it, but then you usually have to cover it up because otherwise it'll be a real rough texture. You can try and use liquid green stuff, but it doesn't work super well for gap lines if the gap lines are a good size. If they're really tiny gap lines, it's not that big of a deal, and you can usually do it. A guy that I just mentioned a little while ago, Vince Venturella, he has a channel on YouTube, and if you just do a search for Vince or Vincent, I think it's Vincent Venturella, he has a channel on YouTube, and he just recently did a video that talked about some stuff I really want to try out, and he uses matte varnish, like Vallejo matte varnish, and he uses it not only to cover up gap lines to some degree, he also uses it to cover up mold lines that he missed, so he puts the model together, scrapes off all the mold lines he thinks, and then primes it, and then finds a mold line. So he can just he uses matte varnish to cover it up, and sometimes you have to use a couple of layers, but it works out really nicely. So that's kind of cool. Let's see here. Korvac says Dawn of War 1 had an army painter in it. That's true. I don't know if I had it for all the armies though. But it was, yeah. If you got a copy of that, you can kind of do some of that. That's kind of cool. Let's see here. What else have we got? Serge says I'm more of a Vallejo paints. Yeah. To be fair, I generally stick more with Vallejo paints and some GW stuff, but mostly Vallejo paints these days. I still use a lot of the GW stuff for washes, but I do like the Vallejo paints generally for a lot of the other stuff. I just like droppers, especially when I'm using a wet palette. The fact that I can just take a dropper and drop some onto the wet palette is nice. With a pot, I have to go and take something, put it in the pot, and then put it on the wet palette, which is a pain in the rear. Now, on the other hand, washes, I always prefer washes to be in a pot, so I can just dip into the wash and then put it on the model. If the wash is in a dropper, then I have to put it in something so I can dip into it, which is kind of a pain, but there it is. Let's see here. Torch says, I've started with craft paints, and I found that the tinier pigments in miniature paints are less gloppy and much smoother. It's worth the cost if you can afford it. Yes, that is exactly the case. The really inexpensive acrylic craft paints that you get in craft stores, Hobby Lobby, Michaels, whatever, are great for terrain. Generally, they're great for terrain because it's bigger. It's the pigments that are in miniature paint are finer. They're ground much finer, and it takes a lot more work and it costs more money. Whereas the pigments that are in, say, craft paint that you get at Walmart or whatever are not nearly as fine, but they do work really well on terrain and things like that. But they don't work super hot on models when they're only like that tall, just because then the pigments are big and everything looks kind of chunky. It's just the way it kind of works out. Let's see here. Have I tried ordering P3 paints off the internet? Well, I could, certainly, but I don't generally like to order paint off the internet. For one thing is sometimes you get it and it's dried out, which is problematic. Sometimes it's not the color that it looked like on the thing. Like I have ordered primer off the internet because it's kind of primer. But again, the only primer that I can think of that I've ordered off the internet is primer that I already use. Like Vallejo Black Airbrush Surface Primer. I ran out, so I ordered some more. But I had already been using it because I bought it and I liked it and whatever. And again, I was a little concerned that maybe it was a little dried out, but with that kind of stuff, I figured I can probably thin it well enough if I need to, but it didn't turn out to be a problem. But actual normal paints, I generally like to buy them in a store or at a convention or whatever, where I can pick them up and look at them and shake the pot and all that kind of stuff. That's maybe just me. But in theory, I think if Privateer Press is going to be at Adepticon this year, I could probably maybe pick some up there. I don't know. We'll see. If they want to send me some, then that would be also cool. I wouldn't mind it. I'd like to, because I said it, I'd like to try them out, but I haven't had a chance to. So let's see. What else have we got? How many systems do you double up with using models? For me, at the moment, I have Frostgrave, Advanced Song of Blades and Heroes, Kings of War, and Sigmar using one set. Wow, that's pretty good. I don't generally do... Well, I do some. I have some models that I can use in either Wreckage, the post-apocalyptic skirmish game by our friend Matt, but then I can also technically use them in This Is Not a Test, which is another post-apocalyptic game, if I end up playing it. So, because they're the same size and they're post-apocalyptic, you can do that. Age of Sigmar, Song of Blades and Heroes, even Frostgrave, anytime that it's kind of basically the same genre and basically the same size, you should totally be able to kind of swap those. I'm interested that you're using them in Kings of War too, because Kings of War is very rank and flank. So I think the interesting thing that Kings of War is doing now that's different than the way it was in Fantasy. In Fantasy, you had these trays, and then you put a bunch of guys on square bases in the trays, and you move the trays around. A lot of people in Kings of War, I'm finding, and Kings of War Mantic pushes this, they're like, well, if you just make a shape that's the shape of the whatever the regiment, and then you just glue a bunch of guys to it, and you don't have to take them away. In original Fantasy, Games Workshop's Warhammer Fantasy, as a group took damage, you peeled off guys. Oh, I lost 3 guys. Boop, boop, boop. In Kings of War, you don't take the guys away as the group takes damage. You just add a die behind it that basically is like, this is how much damage they've taken. And eventually they run off the board or die, one of the two, I'm not sure. But you don't peel guys off, so a lot of people will just be like, well, I'm just going to glue them to the base then. And then they just make like a little tiny diorama, which I think is sort of cool. I've seen some really neat little tiny dioramas of like, this is my troop group, or whatever. So it's interesting to do that. And I think that one of the things that I like about Wargaming in this situation is that I can use these models in this game and these models in this game and go back and forth as long as things match up pretty well. So let's see. Layer of corn red underneath to show through the cracks. Comes out beautiful. Oh, yeah, with the Martian Iron Earth. I have found, and I found this out the hard way, that if you use the texture paints, the crackle paints basically from Games Workshop, if you use them, you do not want to just paint them directly, because I don't usually do them last. I usually do them before I prime, because I want the crackle texture, but I want to be able to paint it. If you just take the crackle paint and paint it directly onto the plastic of the base, it will flake off really easy. So what I've started doing now is actually taking a paint on, like a brush-on primer, priming the base, then doing the crackle paint, putting it on really thick because that makes the best cracks. And then when I go back and I airbrush or whatever, the primer over the top of it, that's just another layer to help hold it down. Because I don't almost ever want to use that as like a last step and have that, because it's just, I don't know why. I like to paint over that stuff. So, but it needs to have it. Those flakes will flake off really easy if they're right under bare plastic. But if you put a layer of any kind of paint in there, they will stick a little bit better. So underpainting it like that makes a lot of sense too. Let's see here. I like to use Mr. Surfacer or Mr. Dissolved Putty for filling small gaps. You can find it online or in the model selection of your decent hobby stores. It's made by Mr. Hobby out of Japan. I love the fact that all their products are called Mr. Mr. Hobby makes Mr. Surfacer or Mr. Dissolved Putty. That's a lot of fun. I enjoy that. I've never heard of any of that stuff, frankly. It's maybe because I'm not in Japan, I suppose. But yeah. Model Mixer TV says, I went for a sick brownish scheme for my Nurgle army instead of the typical green. Do you have any pictures online of your miniatures? If you go into my Instagram or my Facebook or a lot of those different stuff, you'll see some pictures of some of my Nurgle stuff. I don't have like really nice, glamour shots yet. I do plan on doing those once I get things a little bit more dialed in downstairs in the nerd bunker. But I do, and I want to do some nice, some nice senior pictures for them all and see how that works out. But yeah, otherwise you can see some decent enough, cell phone shots of them in battle here and there. I'm pretty happy with my Putrid Blight Kings. So if you go back and look, you might see some images of those. But I do want to take some nicer, images eventually and go that direction. Let's see here. So everybody, Matthew was just showering, just FYI. He just took a shower because he's got an in-store demo today for Wreckage. But if you guys all want to think of Matthew showering, you can, and see how that works out for you. Carol says, Adam, did you play the Batman miniatures game? No, I haven't. I have not. I don't know anybody up here where I live that plays it. I'm about 100 miles north of Milwaukee in Wisconsin, and I know there's a bunch of people in Milwaukee that are playing it, but I don't know anybody up here who's playing it. The models look interesting to me. I don't know. I'm not super... I like superhero movies fine, but I'm not super into superhero comics a bunch. I loved The Dark Knight Returns, the original, Frank Miller comic book from back in the 80s. I like that a lot, and I like some other stuff, Batman Year One and things like that. And Killing Joke even I like well enough, but I've never been super into the comic books the superhero type comic books. I love Hellboy, and there's a bunch of other comics that I've been reading over the years. But yeah, so that's not exactly my area of interest as far as that's concerned. But from what I understand, from what I've seen, the models look amazing. I don't know anything about the rule set though for the Batman miniatures game, so I don't know. The Batman miniatures game is Spanish as well, is Infinity. Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. Todd says, I'm trying to learn to highlight, and I just can't do it. I'm painting Chaos Space Marines. Any suggestions? Honestly, most of my highlighting is more often than not dry brushing. So I'm not a great highlighter as far as, like, I don't do a lot of layering and building up color. Or I do it with airbrush. That's my other way, is that I will prime the model black, and then I will dust it from above with white, and then that kind of acts as the light hitting it from above, the highlight. And then when I go back and I paint over it, in a lot of situations I use washes or glazes really instead of paints, because then they're transparent, and then you see the black to white kind of like dark shadow to light highlight built in, and you just had to slap a bunch of glaze on it, and it looks like you blended it and made it look real fancy. But actual real like brush blending highlighting, that's really more of a question for Sam, as it turns out, who eventually I do want to have on the Sunday show. I just, we're getting there. My motto is start small and grow slowly, which is what I like to do, what I do with the channel, what I do with most stuff that I kind of try to work with. But yeah, so eventually we'll get there. But as far as highlighting, like actual like wet blending or brush blending highlighting, I haven't really gotten to that point myself. Let's see. Adam, I bought the Kill Team box set after watching your video. Cool. My first ever Games Workshop models. The guy at the store told me to tell you the check is in the mail. Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I'd love to see it. Totally. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a little bummed that I'm starting to see reviews out there of Blood Bowl. So Blood Bowl, for those of you that don't know, Games Workshop years ago made this boxed set game, and it was basically the Warhammer Fantasy version of American football. So you've got teams, you've got a pitch, which over here in America we don't call it a pitch, we call it a field, but whatever. And then you've got like a thing that looks like a football, but it's covered in spikes, and there's throwing and the whole deal, and it's like you're trying to get a touchdown and the whole stuff. And I used to play years ago, and I enjoyed it. Well, now they're bringing it back because Games Workshop has been bringing back the Specialist Games line, and the first thing that's coming back out of Specialist Games is Blood Bowl, and it's coming out, from what I understand, this month, November. They're bringing it out in time for Christmas. And I've just been watching, like, there's a couple of blogs that are like, oh yeah, they sent me a copy, and now I'm going to do an unboxing and talk about it. And I'm like, yeah, seriously? No love over here? You guys could send me a copy, I'd talk about it, it'd be great. I'd do it on a live show, I'd do whatever, but nothing. So, yeah, so I'm super dubious about my check coming in the mail, frankly. I don't know what it is that Games Workshop is not prepared to like about me. We'll see. I don't know. I would love to talk to them. I'm hoping that some of the people from Games Workshop, like actually from England Games Workshop, as opposed to Games Workshop America, which doesn't really have any power from what I understand, but I'm hoping that some of those people show up at like Adapticon in March of 2017, because then I'm going to talk to them and see what can happen. Just because, I think I've sold a bunch of Age of Sigmar. I think I've sold a bunch of Kill Team at this point too. And I'm not saying I want them to pay me, but if they're going to come out with some new stuff and they want to send out a copy, and I would be interested. I mean, not in everything. Like, I wouldn't have probably talked about Lost Patrol when that came out. And honestly, the Burning of Prospero. But definitely Blood Bowl, I would have been all up in that. But so anyway, we'll see what happens. Tama Star says, hey Adam, new to the channel, your video intro is awesome. You must do video production for a living. I don't, technically. I do a little bit of video production for a living. I work for a small company, and I'm a user experience, user interface designer. So, which is kind of a fancy term for what used to be a web designer, but now a lot of things are mobile apps, so it's a lot of that stuff too. There are times when I do get to do video production stuff for things at work for us promoting ourselves, but basically I started the channel almost 4 years ago because I wanted to learn video production. I thought, I want to learn video production, so how do I apply that to a hobby that I currently have? Because I've always felt that if you want to learn a new skill, apply it to a hobby. So I was a wargamer and a painter and all that kind of stuff, and I was like, well, heck, I could just start making videos about that, and that's what I kind of did. So yeah, that's where I'm at. But I appreciate it. I'm glad you like the intro. My older intro, where it was just the logo that would come up and like brang, that one was fine. But just watching it, if you didn't know what I was going to talk about, you certainly wouldn't learn anything from the intro. So that's why in the new intro, I wanted to have photographs of actual models. I wanted to have the sound effects, like so you heard the sword on sword and the machine gun when the tank comes out, and the laser kind of gun when the 40K kind of guys come out, and then the dice roll and all that stuff. So I thought about it for a long time, and it worked out pretty well. And I didn't want it to be too crazy, like 3D, like graphic shenanigans. I wanted it to be a little bit more simple and quick. There's a lot of YouTube channels out there that go way too long on their intro because people just want to see the stuff that they want to see. You can make a really cool intro, but if it's a 20-second intro, people are going to lose interest really quick. So if you make a 4-second intro, they're like, oh yeah, that's cool. And it just, it works. So I appreciate it. I'm glad that you liked it. Yay for Hellboy. Mike Mignola is fantastic. Indeed. I'm a big fan. Was thinking about painting my Zombicide Black Plague miniatures in a strong color scheme in Mike Mignola's form. Oh, that'd be kind of cool. Make them look like characters from Darkest Dungeon. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Yeah, that'd be kind of neat. I do love his artwork so much. I wish I could draw like that. It's so amazing to see, like, if you guys have ever seen Hellboy, not the movie. The movie's decent, but the comic book, the artwork is so simple. You look at it and you go, well, I could do that. I mean, there's like 5 lines there. That makes sense. But he's just super good. It's just astounding because you try to do that and you can't. At least I can't. So, did I miss Adam's Reclamation Kill Team? I'm betting that's an autocorrect, and I bet Reclamation is what happens when you type in Necron. You did not miss it yet, Chris Jacoby, because I'm about to talk about it now. As it is, I'm a little late. I usually like to talk about the subject at around 10 a.m. my time, about an hour in, but we're about 10:15, so I've been answering a lot of questions. It's been good. So I'm going to switch this camera over here to that. Look at that right there. That's some gray guys on a piece of gray fabric is what that is. All right, so those are my current Necron warriors. I have never built Necrons before. They are interesting to build. They're not terrible. I've built worse things, but the arms are actually, what have I built? Actually, the scouts that I've been building lately are a little bit harder to build. Getting, the arm that's holding the bolter and then the one that's getting those two matched up, I find to be very difficult, as it turns out. With these guys, it's not nearly as hard because it's so, like, and you can kind of see this here. You see how that arm goes into that socket over here, right? So that's like a ball into a socket, just like in a real skeleton. Moving around too much, sorry. So that's kind of nice because it allows you to take that arm and then just sort of, but I will not tell you how many of these arms I have glued to my fingers in just trying to build these 10 guys. It's been a substantial amount. They're a little difficult, but not terrible. So, yeah, basically the parts on them, you've got the legs down, so from the pelvisy bit and all the way down to the ground. Oops. You've got that part, and then you've got the upper torso is 2 halves, front half, back half. You glue that together. You glue the head kind of on, and they're all sort of, if you notice, they're all kind of like leaning forward. Okay. So the head does not go on like the way I would think it would. It just kind of goes on. They're all sort of like definitely hunched over, leaning forward. And then there's this big gun. Now you'll notice this big gun here. It looks like there's a part missing, doesn't it? There is. It's because this is the part that's missing. So what you do, if you've ever seen pictures of Necrons before, they have this bright kind of transparent green plastic, neon green plastic tube that would go right about there. There. So what you do is you put them together like this. And the gun, this end part here is glued on last. So you glue them on there, you get them all set, you paint them, you texture, all that stuff, and then the last thing you do when you're done, even technically probably after you dull coat them, is you then take this green piece and you cut it off, and you basically kind of have to sort of wedge it in there and then glue it in, and you do not use CA glue. You do not want to use super glue to glue the clear plastic because the super glue will it'll fog the clear plastic and not make it look clear anymore. If you've ever watched CSI on television, when they want to get fingerprints off of something, they take a bunch of super glue, put it in a piece of tinfoil, and they heat it up, and that makes this vapor that then makes the fingerprint stand out more. Well, even without the heating, you will do that. Like if you're trying to glue a clear plastic canopy onto an airplane, if you're an airplane modeler, if you use CA glue, it will fog the inside of the canopy. So you never want to use CA glue to glue clear plastic things onto things. So you end up using either plastic cement. Some people will even use PVA, but I generally would use plastic cement. It doesn't give off the same fog. So anyway, yeah, there's these 10 guys here. Now you'll notice, if you can, if it focuses, there we go. I didn't do much for texturing on the bases. I have to actually go brush some of this stuff off, but I didn't do much for texturing. Normal Games Workshop bases have a texture already built in. They're not just flat plastic. They've got a little kind of a bit of a texture. What I'm going to try to go for these guys is I want to go for them basically as if they're walking on pavement. So the base texture of the base is going to be the pavement, okay? But I want to have some rubble, so there's going to be a little bit of having a little bit of trouble getting the focus to work here. So there's going to be some kitty litter there, and there's a little bit of baking soda sprinkled onto CA glue, not a lot, and that's going to be pretty much it. Now on some of these guys, I'm going to be using some of my little scale model bricks that I make. There's a video. I can't do a pachow in here because it's not how this works, but if you go back a long time ago, probably 3 years ago, through my back catalog, you can find how I make small little scale model bricks. So I'm going to have on some of these, not every one of them, but on some of them there's going to be a brick or two laying around, like they're stalking through a city and they've been blowing up buildings and whatever and that kind of stuff. And that's kind of what I want to do for these guys' bases. I've never done that. I usually do real textured bases with lots of stuff, and I either go with a dirt color or an ash color or something like that. But the bases themselves are going to be mostly kind of blackish with a little tiny bit of highlighting. I may try putting in almost like some road stripes here and there. We'll see how it goes. I don't know if I want to do that or not. I mean, I don't necessarily want to put I don't want them walking through a parking lot per se. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But I want to put a little bit of extra stuff on here, but make it look like it's more of an urban situation. And that's what I want to do with these guys. So my main list, for those who are wondering, is I'm using 10 warriors. And the thing that's interesting to me is that warriors there's no warrior sergeant or warrior boss. Like you just have a list of 10 warriors, and as far as I can tell, there's no guy who's the boss. You know what I mean? So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm just going to end up painting one guy a good deal differently than the rest, and then those guys, he's going to be probably the boss of the entire, he's going to be the leader of the entire kill team. My other 3 models that are going to be, I'll be building probably even starting possibly today, that I'm going to be building for this group are going to be 3 tomb blades. Tomb blades are kind of like Necron jet bikes. You buy them in a set of 3. The reason that I went with the tomb blades is because I could basically get to right near 200 points by buying 1 box of tomb blades, and I bought them at my local shop. I think they cost, I don't know, $35 or something like that, because he does a discount there. So to my mind, it seemed like a good idea just to be like, okay, cool, I'll be able to do this real easily and then have a 2,000 point. But these guys are already got in the basement, and like I mentioned before, you'll notice how light gray these guys are. This is because that's how old these guys are. The plastic that Games Workshop used to use was a lighter gray. I mean, back in the 80s, it was almost white, but this is not that old. These are models probably from the late 90s, maybe early 2000s. Well, I bought them in the early 2000s, so they're probably from the 90s, late 90s. But it was a slightly different plastic back then. So anyway, the tomb blades are from are very recent, and I just bought them actually a couple weeks ago. So, did I say Tomb Kings? I meant Tomb Blades. Sorry, Tomb Blades is what I bought recently to add into those guys. And then normally, from what I've been reading online, with Kill Team, it's not usually a good idea to add a lot of extra stuff to your, I'm going to put a plasma gun on this guy, I'm going to put this, and a lot of upgrades. You don't usually add a lot of upgrades to your models in Kill Team because you want as many in Kill Team because you want as many models as possible, is what I'm trying to say. You want as many models as possible, so the more you spend on plasma guns and weird junk like that, the less guys you get. However, they say that the upgrades that are for the tomb blades, these 3 kind of jet bike sort of things, are pretty good. So I'm probably going to be, from the list that I've written, I'm going to be adding, there's a neuroscope and there's shield vanes. The shield vanes give them basically a cover, or not a cover save, but an armor save, I think, that goes up to 3+ instead of 4+. And then the neuroscope, I think, ignores cover, something like that. So, yeah, that's pretty much my very simple Necron list. I'm going to go with these warriors because I have them, and now they're built. And I've always wanted to kind of paint and do some Necron warriors because I think they're cool, and I like the little green thingies here, which it's amazing how, like this is much brighter green to me, to my eyes, than it's showing up on camera. This is like a neon green to me, but here it's showing up not that bright. But yeah, so I'm going to be building, like I said, I built these guys, and I'm looking forward to painting them. I think I'm not going to paint them standard. I'm not going to go with the standard, I'm making them silver. I mean, I kind of am. They're going to be silver, but I'm going to make them look, I think, rusty and dirty and grungy. From what I know of Necrons, which I'm a Necron fluff guy, they basically kind of hang out underground in like these planets that don't even know they're there. They're there for millions and zillions of years. And then eventually people on that planet start digging and poking around, and then there's, archaeologists who've like, oh, we found an ancient civilization, and then it just basically turns on the facility, and then all these guys get up and just start just laying waste and killing everybody on the planet. So that's why you shouldn't become an archaeologist. That's just science. So yeah, that's what these guys do, and I've always been kind of interested in the concepts. I mean, they are very kind of pseudo-Egyptian, pseudo-undead robots, sci-fi, things. But I've always wanted to paint them and kind of give them a try. So that's why, and again, like I said, I've had them in the basement for quite some time. So that's why I'm doing that. The tomb blades, these guys, like I said, built relatively easily. They didn't go together too hard. The tomb blades look like they're for slightly more advanced modelers. So I think building the 3 of them is going to take a bit of time. These, I could build like 2 of these every hour or 2 generally, but I get really into mold lines and making sure everything's smooth and going through all that stuff. If I would have just trimmed them off and then glued them together real quick, I could have got them done a lot faster. There are not that many parts. Like I said, there's the legs down, including the pelvis. Then there's 2 halves to the front and back of the torso. There's this arm here, which goes from the shoulder to the front of the gun. It's not connected. Then there's this arm, which goes to the gun, which is connected. And there's the head. And then at the very end, I just glued this little doohickey onto the end here. And then at the very end, once they're painted and everything's all done, I'm just going to stick this thing in there. And then pretty much you're finished. So there's not a ton of parts. Like, I know Tau have got a lot more parts than these guys do. So they take a bit longer to do. But, yeah, I looked at the tomb blades, and they're going to be a bit of work, I think, to get done. So, I don't know. We'll see how that works out, though. But, yeah, so that's my relatively simple Necron list. I'm looking at 10 warriors and 3 tomb blades with some upgrades. That's pretty much about it. I have played 40K with motorcycles before, with bikes, like for Chaos or for Space Marines. But I've never played with jet bikes at all before. I've never played Eldar, I've never played Dark Eldar, any of that kind of stuff. So the fact that basically tomb blades are jet bikes, that'll be also very new to me because I've never really played with jet bikes before to see how that kind of, mechanic works or anything along those lines. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be kind of cool to see how they work and, see what local people in my area, otherwise known as your meta, what the meta around you might be. The term meta in gaming gets used sort of interestingly. Basically, your local meta around you will be like, okay, well, what are the people around you? How do they how do they play 40K? How do they play Malifaux? Like, what are the things that are popular? And then you might go to a different part of the country or the world and then play the same game there, and then nobody runs lists that way. They run them totally differently, and that's the meta for that area. That's generally what the term gets thrown around as. What's your local meta? You see it a lot, especially with tournament players. When you go and play X-Wing, Star Wars X-Wing, in an area, you can see, everybody uses a YT 1300 and they do it this way and whatever, and that's like the big list to beat. And then you might go to another side of the country or the world, and find out nobody runs stuff that way because they all run stuff this way, and that's just what the local meta generally does talk about. All right, so let me see here. What people have been talking about here? Peter's talking about the Necron Master Race. Necrons are pretty good. Adam, I recommend coming up with some way to indicate which guys are your specialists. I've played a lot of Kill Team, and it's pretty important to remember who has what abilities. That is a very good point. I am doing that with my scouts, my Space Marine scouts. With these guys, the specialists are going to be kind of... I know one of them I have to indicate is the leader, and it's going to be one of the warriors, I think. And then the three specialists are all going to be each of the 3 Tomb Blades. So yeah, I'm going to be building them a little bit differently and definitely painting them a bit differently. And then that'll be, yeah, because it is important in Kill Team, you have to have a leader from your group, and you also have to have 3 specialists. And they get these different abilities. And it's a nice idea to have them so you can easily spot and go, oh, that's the guy who has stealth, or this is the guy who has, whatever. So yeah, it's super important, again, to do that. Let's see here. In Kill Team, since you can't take HQ characters, I like the basicness of the battlefield. It doesn't feel like things hinge on models, but tactics. Yeah, no, I could see that. That definitely makes sense. I do miss the HQs a little bit just because I do enjoy building and painting them. Like I said earlier, I came across a Necron Overlord at the store I was at yesterday, and I was like, oh man, I should get him. That'd be kind of... But then I'm like, he can't go into Kill Team, and so yeah, I would only be buying him just to paint for fun, which is nothing wrong with that. But yeah, so that's the one thing. Mark Griffith says, I have a 3,000 point Necron army, but I dislike the warrior sculpts so much I just can't field any. Immortals are definitely my troops of choice. They look much nicer. Well, that's cool. I like the look of these myself. I have seen people convert them so they're not so hunched over and they're like a little bit like... I've seen people who've modified the legs so it looks like they're walking and not just sort of like hunched over and squatting. Although I kind of like that. They look a little spookier to me, to some degree. But that's... Yeah, different people like different stuff. How much can you convert Necrons? I have a pretty neat Orc Def Dread that I stuck on a Dunecrawler set of legs. I mean, you can convert them. There's nothing that says you can't. There's not a lot of... Like I said earlier, Chaos Space Marines, Orcs... Those are the really convertible model armies. Those are the ones that there's a lot of stuff that you can do to convert. Space Marines, you can convert a little bit. Tau, they don't really go well with conversions. I bet you Necrons probably don't make a lot of sense for conversions either. Like, first of all, what do you use to convert them with? You know what I mean? There's just not a lot of... Like, I know there's the flares. Like, you could get really fancy with the flares and put, like, a lot more, like, weird skin on them and stuff like that, I guess. But, yeah, most of the army, I mean, robots are difficult to... They should all... If they're all supposed to look the same, then that's kind of the point of them looking the same. So, yeah, it's difficult. Let's see... I've converted some Necron Lords, but not to a great deal. Yeah, you could do some of that with the fancier guys. But not necessarily, like, definitely the rank and file, I don't know that there's much you could do with them. There may be some companies out there that sell, like, different heads, companies that are not Games Workshop. There are a lot of companies out there that make conversion bits for Space Marines and for lots of different 40K models that they make them because Games Workshop doesn't. They're generally resin, that kind of stuff. But I don't know if there's any Necron conversion kits out there. I'd have to look around a little bit. There's a company called Puppets War. There's Max Mini. Chapter House. I don't know if they're still in business or not. They got into some legal troubles with Games Workshop at some point. So there's a bunch of different companies out there, mostly in Europe, I've noticed, that do cool little resin conversion kits and things like that. But I don't know if there's anything much for Necrons. I'd have to look around. It might be kind of interesting, actually, just to check it out. You can convert them in terms of making them disassembled or broken and repairing them with innards showing using guitar wire and stuff. Oh yeah, no, I've seen a little bit of that. I think that could be cool. I've seen people convert, because the thing is that one of the special rules for Necrons is that they have something called reanimation protocol, I believe, where, and again, this is me being a noob to Necrons, but sometimes they can get killed and then they can kind of come back. And that's part of the sort of zombie, sort of undead, sort of robot Terminator vibe that they have going on. And I have seen people who will put them together, like their legs have been blown off, but they're on the base, and they're still going, or whatever. And I have seen people use guitar wire a little bit because it looks like cabling and things like that. It's kind of neat. So I remember playing 3rd edition Necron, such a simple army. Lord, Flayed Ones, Immortals, Pariahs, Warriors, Destroyers, Scarabs, Wraiths, Tomb Spiders, Monolith, Heavy Destroyer. That was it. Yeah, they've added more stuff to the list now with Death Marks and Cryptics and stuff like that, from what I understand, but I don't have any of those models, and I don't really plan on putting any of them into my kill team, so I don't know a ton about them, but I do. But they did finally sort of expand stuff. Yeah, and the Catan characters. I don't know if it's Catan or Citan. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it properly. Peter Pan says, whenever I get tired of the hobby, especially painting, I try to convert cheap display models, cars, tanks, etc., to orc. Oh, I can see that, definitely. I mean, that's the thing that's kind of cool about orcs, is that you can convert... like you can take a Space Marine Rhino and just glue a bunch of junk to it, and now say it's what they call a converted truck, or a looted truck. So the orcs would take whatever stuff they found in the battlefield, fix it back up again, and now it's one of theirs. So there's a lot. I've seen a lot of cool converted trucks, as they're called, Lehman Russ tanks, Rhinos, things like that. I'd love to see like a converted truck made from a whatever those goofy Eldar floating tanks are. I forget what they're called. That would be kind of cool to see an orc version of that. That'd be neat. I'd like that. Serge says, supposedly it is Catan. Interesting. Huh, alright. Robocrash says, you made this? I made this. That's how orcs work. Yep, exactly. I get that. Mark says, Cryptics would have been good to convert, but the 7th edition Codex has removed pretty much all of their special rules. Who are the guys, you guys will know this probably, who are the Necron dudes who seem to only have one eye, and they kind of are like, it's in the middle, and I think they're frequently snipers. Are those Death Marks? I think those are great looking models, though I don't know that I have any use for them in my kill team army, but I just always thought they were really neat looking models with that just sort of one eye in the middle. Let's see here. Looted Carnifex. That would be... I don't even know how that would work. It's funny, but I don't know how it would work. I don't think it would... I'm not sure that would... I don't know. Death Marks. Yep. Okay, good. Necrons used to be a much simpler army list when they were metal. Lord, Warrior, Destroyer, and Scarab. Well, only having 4, that's probably a little too simple to some degree, but I don't think I think somewhere in the basement I might have some metal Immortals, maybe? Like in a drawer somewhere. I don't even know why. For a while I was just buying Necrons because I was going to use them for something else. Like I was like, I'll buy these guys when I find them cheap because I'm going to use them to be like evil Terminator type robots for some other skirmish game. And then I kind of didn't for years, and they sat in a drawer, and then Kill Team came around and I'm like, all right, well, I've got these guys already. I might as well give it a try. So I do have some weird Necron models that I've never used before. That's part of being a hoarder, which if you've watched that video, you can kind of understand that. Yeah, but that's one of the things that's sort of interesting about thinking about like those guys being metal. Like I can't imagine warriors being metal. That would be hard to build, in my opinion. I'm not a big fan of metal models in most situations because they're very difficult to build. If it's a metal model that has very few parts, and you're starting to see technologies that allow the metal models to be fewer parts, because the molding is easier, then I'm pretty cool with it. But to be honest, one of the reasons I'm not a big fan of Infinity yet is because I've built a couple of Infinity models and I nearly died. Because it is really difficult, because there's so many tiny little parts, and it's all metal, so it's hard to glue them together, and you end up pinning a bunch. It's just really difficult. So that's another reason why I'm not super into Infinity. The people who put those things together and paint them really well, they look amazing, don't get me wrong, but it's just, for me, I don't know that I'd be able to pull it off. So Necron's running with scissors. That sounds bad. I've seen, let's see, someone put wires going into its skull and had a weird boy piloting it with a control panel. Oh, that'd be cool for a looted Carnifex. That's pretty cool. I can see that. I've seen a looted Death Star. There's a Necron bit from the command barge that apparently fits on the Carnifex carapace. Really? That's interesting. Hey, good morning, Adam. Glad I could catch your show. How goes it in your neck of the woods? Cold up here in Alaska, but we lack snow again this year so far. Currently working on an Imperial Titan. Ooh, Imperial Titan. Cool. It's supposed to get like 65 degrees Fahrenheit today. So it's, it's unseasonably warm for early November in Wisconsin. So that's how things are going here. It's a lovely sunny day out right now, which is probably why I look a little too bright. Like if I hold my hand like this, I block a little bit more of the light. But yeah, for once it's pretty sunny out during the show, so I've got that going on. Christopher Rudolph asks, have you delved into Guild Ball at all? So I went to an event back in spring of this year, a distributor conference with a friend of mine who owns a store, and I'm kind of his ad hoc marketing guy, so he usually brings me along to this thing, and then basically it's a fun thing. I get to go to some seminars, and I got to talk to the guys from Steamforged Games. They came over from England. I mean, it's interesting because it's not a very big, it's a good sized distributor conference, but these guys came over. These, like, everyone I was talking to in the Steamforged booth in the trade area, had English accents, and they had come over from there. And so I talked to them a little bit about the game, and it was kind of fun. And then later on, I played a demo because on one of the nights, it's like a 2-day event. On the first night you're there after dinner, then there's a big demo area, and you just go and play all kinds of board games and some miniatures games, mostly board games. And they had Guild Ball set up, and it was the first time I'd ever played it. So I finally got a demo. I had wanted to get a demo at Adepticon in March, but it didn't work. Didn't happen. So it was kind of cool to be able to finally do that and play a little bit. And it's a neat game. I think the models are great. I like what they're doing with it. I don't know anybody around here who plays, sadly. I know in Milwaukee there's some Guild Ball people. I know in Chicago there's a big Guild Ball kind of thing going on. I was talking to a friend of mine last night, or not last night, but this last week, and he was talking about playing Guild Ball and everything, and that's great. I just have not found anybody else like anywhere around here who's into it, so I haven't even pulled the trigger and like tried to buy any yet. But it looks cool, and I'm glad that it seems as if they're doubling down, because the models are all metal, but they're predominantly like 1-2 piece metal, so I don't have a big problem with that. And it's a game that's more soccer based than Blood Bowl, which is more American football based. But the thing that's really interesting is, so now Blood Bowl is coming back. Games Workshop is like, oh yeah, we're bringing it back, and they're making really great looking models and all that stuff. And rather than rolling over, Guild Ball, the company, Steamforged Games, from what I understand, they are releasing a plastic starter kit. So they've moved from metal to plastic, which is a big jump, money-wise for them as an organization. Making metal models is much, much cheaper, at least in initial startup, than making plastic models. The molds for making plastic models are really expensive, $50,000 to make a mold, because they have to be machined out of steel, whereas molds for metal models are made out of like rubber, I think, and if they get eaten up or destroyed in some fashion through the process of making the models, you just make more rubber molds. It's not that big of a deal. They're pretty cheap. They go pretty quick. Steel machined, molds that you do injection molding plastic into are very expensive to make. So these guys are doing now, from what I understand, Guild Ball is doing a 2-player starter of plastic models and the whole kit and everything you need, which I think is a really good idea. But like I said, still at this point, I don't know anybody around here who plays it. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I mean, it's a potential. Maybe I'll get a 2-player starter and paint them up, and then have at least 2 forces where I can play with people that are, if they don't have the models, that's fine. Which is kind of what I'm probably going to do with Blood Bowl, since I'm going to end up having to buy my own copy of Blood Bowl, like some sort of savage. But yeah, so we'll see how that goes. I'm just glad to see that they're out there kind of doing a different thing, but still bringing it to bringing it to competition, and still also just, when there's competition between companies, the consumers always win, pretty much. So I think that's cool. Guild Ball is completely free to play, so there's no harm in giving it a try. Well, the rules are. Yeah, certainly. You can download the rules for free, but you still need the models, I suppose. I mean, you could proxy something, I guess, if you wanted to. There's no reason you couldn't do that, at least to give it a try, certainly. Jonathan says, hey, good day to you. What do you think about Stalker in Kill Team? It doesn't exceed the hull point limit, and it can boost the Immortals. I don't know. That's a good question. I know that there's something going on with... I know there's special rules in the back of Kill Team, or there's a FAQ, I think, that talks about one of the one of the vehicles for the Necrons has this special thing that gives it higher armor until a certain point, and then that armor goes down. And I think, I swear it says, and I don't have my iPad near me, it's way over there, but it says something about how, yeah, that doesn't work. In like, there's a special thing, like there's a special power that the Skitarii have that gives them better ballistic skill or something like that. That's just normal in regular 40k, and they're like, yeah, that doesn't work in Kill Team. You can't use that power. So it's one of the reasons why you don't see as many people maybe running Skitarii in Kill Team, because this really super cool power that you're paying points for in normal 40k does not apply in Kill Team because it would break the game. So there's at the back of Kill Team, there's a bunch of things that are like, hey, here's things that would break Kill Team that we've just decided on, and you can take a look at some of those. And I think that some of that quantum shielding stuff that you see for Necrons is not allowed because of the stuff that it says in the back of the rules. So yeah. I'm being told that there are paper models you can proxy for Guild Ball. Well, that's a pretty smart idea. That's cool. That's awesome. Neat. Uncle Adam, can we see your crons? Well, I was showing them a little earlier, if you just got here. They just warriors so far, and I haven't painted them yet, but I've started texturing the bases, so we're getting a little bit of that. I'm going with more of an urban sort of thing, and so I've got some kitty litter down there in the bottom, and then I've put some more CA glue on top of them, and then I put some baking soda. I've got to brush it all off. Well, that's not really helping at all, but you got to brush it all off a little bit, and I'm going to make them look like they're on like a city street with some rubble on it. That's the way I'm planning on painting their bases. And then the models themselves, I'm going to be making silver, like a silver normal metallic base, like a normal Necron, but I'm going to try to make them look real rusty or dirty or grungy or something like that, and kind of go from there. So that's what I'm going to do. My list is going to be 10 warriors and then 3 tomb blades with some upgrades, and then I'll be right around 200 points. That's basically my plan. It's pretty simple, but it's what I'm going to end up doing. So let's see here. Dominic says, gotta go, my oven just blew up. Well, that is not good. So good luck with that. I hope that everything is fine. My wife and I, at our place we lived before here, the oven took 45 minutes to cook a frozen pizza because it was very old, and most of the burners didn't work, and then eventually we found out that one of the burners didn't work because there was a dead spider stuck in it, and then it was a gas stove, so like the gas would try to blow in here and then hit the little sparky thing to start, and then it wouldn't because there was a dead spider wedged inside the burner, which was gross. So now we have an electric stove, and we live in a different place, which we bought, and we don't rent anymore, so that's probably for the best. That's all I got about ovens. Otherwise, that's the majority of my oven knowledge, frankly. Twerch, talking about, from Mantic, Dreadball. Dreadball is like a super crazy sci-fi kind of game, and it's interesting because Dreadball is not like a normal sport. Like, you can say, oh yeah, well, Blood Bowl is basically American football. Guild Ball is kind of soccer, which the rest of the world just calls regular football. Dreadball is like a mixture sort of between football and maybe basketball, because you've got like, it's not just like, oh, I've got one basket over here and one basket over here, but depending on the map, there's lots and lots of little weird places you can score and do stuff, and it's very, like I said, sci-fi, and it's interesting. I played a demo of it once, and I don't think it was for me. It was maybe too, I think the guy who's running the demo, honestly, made it too hard too, so that was problematic. Like, normally when you start out and you're going to teach someone a game, you give them a demo that's easy, or you give them something that's sort of simplistic, and he went with like, oh, we're going to do a really super detailed demo, and then it didn't help. I was at a convention. I think demos at conventions need to basically get you used to the rules, get you used to the concepts, but don't just be like, all right, we're going to play like the advanced rules for the first time. It just doesn't make any sense, but that's the way it happened. So I'm planning on attending Adepticon for the first time in 2017, says Charlie. I'll be flying from Florida. Most of my minis are put together with superglue. Will the cold temperatures make the glue brittle? The cold temperatures in the hold, I'm assuming, is what you're saying. That's a good question. Well, I've never heard... I mean, I know that you can put them in the freezer to break... We were just talking about that earlier. You can put models in the freezer to help break the CA glue if you need to unglue them. I don't know that does the hold get that cold? Because like, if it did, you would think that like your shampoo that might be in your check bag would get frozen or something. I don't know that they get that cold in the hold. To be fair, I flew to Utah recently and I took my models along, but I took them as carry-on. I used a Battle Foam, what case did I use? 432 case. The 432 case is designed specifically to be carry-on size. I don't know, I haven't flown commercial previous to going to Utah back in the beginning of October. I hadn't flown commercial for 8 years. But everywhere all over the airport they have these little frameworks, and they're like, if your carry-on bag fits inside this framework, it is okay. If it does not, it is too big. And the 432 from Battle Foam, at least, is designed to fit in that little frame, and it does because I fit mine in there. And so yeah, so I didn't have to worry about that. But that's a good question. I don't know if putting them in check. I know there were people at I know there was people at Valhalla that had checked their models. There was a guy who had one of the huge Battle Foam hard side, like really hard black plastic, I think they call them black label cases, that was humongous. It was 2.5 feet tall. It was huge. And yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if that would do that or not. If anyone else has got any ideas on that, that'd be interesting to know. Fred says, I have an off-topic question about airbrushing. That's not off-topic. Airbrushing is fine. Do you airbrush the base coat, layer coat, and then a shade at the end? Well, it depends on how I'm going to do it. I do it one of two ways. I either just prime black and then use a white primer and then dust the models from above. So let's say this is my model. I would spray it down kind of all over the model, and then that white layer becomes my highlight, and my the white layer becomes my highlight, and then it kind of fades down into the to the darker colors. Then I go back and color over it with glaze, which is a very transparent paint. If I use normal paint, you kind of lose the highlight to shade, but the transparent paint becomes like a filter, and now you can see light red to dark red, you know, if you're using a red glaze. That's one way to use airbrush. The other way is to prime, and then I will spray, like if I was doing red, I would do a dark red, so that the places that the red didn't get would fade to black, and that's your shadow. And then I might then take a light red and just hit the top of the head, top of the shoulders, and those places to get another highlight. So in that situation, your black primer, let's say, and then a dark red and a light red, if red was your color. If it was blues, it would be a dark blue and a lighter blue, that kind of stuff. That's the other way that I would airbrush. Some people get a lot fancier and do all kinds of crazy stuff, but I generally lay down my layers and my highlights and things like that, and then go back and do details mostly with brush. So like if there's a sword, obviously you're painting that in metallics generally, unless you're going non-metallic metals, which for me is witchcraft. I can't do that stuff, and so it's, but yeah, I mean, it depends on the model too, because sometimes the models have like a shirtless model is half skin and half pants, for the lack of a better term. So you have to decide which color is going to be, like in that situation I would probably go more with the skin tone with my airbrushing. Although I probably, in that situation, I would probably go do the white to black fade, because then the skin color could be just a simple wash or a glaze, and then I would go and paint the pants separately with brush. So it takes a bit of work to sort of figure out how you want to do it, and sometimes it takes a bit of thinking. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can use the airbrush stuff for that. So let's see. Reverse says, your tip for baking soda has made my Dune themed AdMech army look a lot better. Well, great. I'm glad to hear it. I'm going to eventually actually make a video about baking soda bases. I'm going to make a second attempt. I've tried to make a video once, and things went really poorly. I glued a base to my fingers, and then I swore a lot, and then I got it off my fingers, and then I glued the base to the table. So I have saved that footage just in case I ever want to, release it for funsies. But I do need to reshoot that and actually put it out there, because I get a lot of people asking about the baking soda bases and stuff. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Let's see here. Something about the hole in airplane windows. Yeah, okay. I did just see something about that recently on somewhere. Yeah, when I airbrush, Malev says, when I airbrush, I completely finish my airbrush process, and then I move on to brush painting. Same here. I do the airbrush stuff first, get that all taken care of out of the way, and then I go and I do the detail painting over, that. Can you recommend a wargaming game that I can play with my friends that's affordable and not Warhammer? I would tell you to look at Song of Blades and Heroes. It is a PDF download. It costs $8 American. It's a great little easy kind of fantasy skirmish game. It's made by a company called Ganesha, or Ganesha, depending on how you want to pronounce it, Games. And I think it's ganeshagames.net. But if you just look for Song of Blades and Heroes, you'll find it just on the internet. You can also get, if you don't like PDFs, I think that they also do a print-on-demand book for the game that's maybe $15 American. And it's a great little game. I teach it at conventions. When I go to gaming conventions, I teach people, and to play it, and I do demos and things like that. And it's cool. They also now have an advanced version. It's called Advanced Song of Blades and Heroes. So you can also check that out. And then Andrea, who is the guy who wrote it, he also has done a bunch of other versions. So it's the fantasy version is Song of Blades and Heroes. There's Song of Drums and Shakos, which is like Napoleonics. He's got tons and tons of different versions. There's one called Fear and Faith, which is like, vampires and vampire hunters and zombies and stuff like that. And yeah, it's a great little system. If you're looking for something inexpensive and you can use whatever models you want and play that way, it's a great system. Song of Blades and Heroes, check it out. Kovacs says, my only issue with X-Wing is I like the hobby side more than playing. Yeah, I mean, you can paint X-Wing, guys. You can't, or ships. You can do it. Obviously, there's plenty of places. I eventually am going to try painting a couple of them, and then if I do, I'll probably make a video about it once I learn how to do it. But, yeah, that is, for other people, the fact that they don't have to do the hobby is the big draw, because they don't like to paint or they don't like to build or whatever. But for those of us who are more hobby heroes, X-Wing can sometimes be a bummer because you're like, well, I don't really get to paint him. I mean, you can, obviously, but you don't, a lot of people don't have to. So Peter Higgins says, I would definitely enjoy to watch a blooper reel. Well, yeah, and you and me both. So it was not good. That was a rough one off. Let's see here. David Keith, for some reason, has mentioned Mech Warrior Dark Age. I'm not sure. I'm going to piss a lot of people off with what I'm about to mention. Mech Warrior Dark Age. As a cheap game, I guess I don't. Do they still make it? Because I used to play. So when the first collectible pre-painted miniatures game came out, which was called Mage Knight, it was made by WizKids. I got in on it because it was cool. I thought at the time, sort of. I'm like, well, this is neat. I don't have to paint these guys. And this is kind of when I was still like, I was not quite to the hobby hero status that I am today, but I was like, well, this is kind of cool. I can play it with some friends, and a bunch of us collected it and played it, and it was okay. And I went to some tournaments from time, and that's when I learned that I did not like tournaments. And but then when Mech Warrior came out, I'm like, well, I used to play at BattleTech back in the day, so this is basically the BattleTech that I don't have to paint, and there's all kinds of cool robots. And it just, yeah, it didn't really. I played it for a while, and I collected a bunch of it, but it didn't, in the long run, keep my interest. And then now I don't even know if they still make it, but they might. Let's see here. I just saw another question, but now I'm missing it here. I mean, HeroClix is still a big thing. That's like, they tried a lot of different things. There was the Mech Warrior after Mage Knight sort of started to pass out, but like for whatever reason, HeroClix was the one that stuck. They tried Action Clicks, Horror Clicks, Sports Clicks. There was tons of different Clicks games that they made, and none of them really stuck. HeroClix was the one that still, to this day, is like, my local shop, they have tournaments every Sunday, and there's a lot of people playing, and that's cool. I mean, it's great, but yeah, it's just, for me, I have to admit, I mean, there's a Tumblr out there somewhere with just pictures of horribly pre-painted, like, HeroClix models. Like, a lot of them, it's just their faces. Like, their eyes are, like, stamped on and they're really weird, and, like, one's on the forehead, and it's just not great. So, that's what you get when you get the sometimes, not always, but that's what you get when you get the pre-painted stuff. The pre-paints for X-Wing are kind of great, as it turns out. But it's a spaceship. It's not nearly as hard to do, I think, a spaceship sometimes that way. But Dorky Dad says Mech Warrior was fun for a bit, but it got a bit bloated, and also hated that playing faction pure never gave any advantage. No, same here. It did get crazy bloated with all the little weird tanks and the weird transports and this and that and the other things. I'm like, I just wanted to play with the robots. You know what I mean? But so yeah, that's kind of a bummer. I'm really interested in, even though I'm not a big video gamer these days as much, I am very interested in the new BattleTech game that Harebrained Schemes is going to be building. One of the reasons I like it is because it's not like a game where you're in the cockpit. I mean, for the longest time, and that was really cool. I wanted to be in the cockpit of a mech warrior. But after playing a bunch of those games, you basically just kind of walk around in a circle and sort of shoot each other, you know? Like, you walk this way, but you turn your torso this way, and you just sort of shoot each other until one of you dies. And I'm like, well, that's kind of a bummer. But this new game from Harebrained Schemes, which is still in production, it's not out yet, but you can see some images and some videos of it online, is going to be it's going to be turn-based for one thing, and it's going to be a lot more like the tabletop game because you're looking at stuff not from top down. You can move your camera actually any way you want, so it's a lot more like playing on a table, because sometimes you look at the table this way and sometimes you look at the table that way, and then you can say, well, this guy's going to go here and he's going to fire on these guys, and so that I'm kind of interested in. From what I understand, it's kind of based off the same engine that they did for their Shadowrun Chronicles game, which was also pretty popular on Steam and places like that. So yeah, I'm interested in that when that eventually comes out. There was a Kickstarter for it, which I didn't get in on, but that's fine. Once it comes out, I'll just buy it normal, you know, like a regular person, I guess. So anyway, so I think we're done, as it turns out. It's 11 o'clock, and Alexander said the stream died for him. That's weird. I think it's still going, isn't it? Anybody else see it? It says they're still good over here. Health is good. Yep. All right. Well, but anyway, it is 11 o'clock, and it got really bright out all of a sudden. I'm getting like a definite thing going on over here. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I appreciate that you guys come to watch, and I appreciate that you guys take a look at my Necrons, and I was able to answer a bunch of questions, and so we'll go from there. Once I get these guys painted up, you'll definitely see them again. Probably... I don't know if you'll see the Tomb Blades until I get them actually painted, but we'll see. Maybe that's the case. But definitely once these guys all get painted up, you'll see them again, and then we'll do all that kind of stuff. So I appreciate it that everybody is... oh, good. It's catching up again. But yeah, so this is the end of the show, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks at the next Every Other Sunday show. I don't know what the topic is yet, because I don't usually come up with it till a couple days before, but it'll be something else. Probably not Kill Team next time, but we'll talk about something else, maybe some more Age of Sigmar, maybe some other kind of game, and we'll see how things are going. But I hope you guys all have a good rest of your day, or end of the day, depending on where you live, and we'll see you next time.